Hello, Commonwealth Sport Canada community. My name is Aerin England, and I'm the social media lead behind the Commonwealth Sport Canada accounts. You are tuning into Champ Chats, the series where we dive a little bit deeper into the lives of athletes and alumni of the Commonwealth Games. Today, I'm joined by an athlete who spent a lot of time at the beach, but not necessarily on vacation. He is a beach volleyball athlete who has spent over 10 seasons and 100 international competitions representing Canada. In 2018, he was one half of the dynamic beach volleyball duo that took home a silver medal for Team Canada at the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games. Welcome to Champ Chats, Sam Pedlow. Sam, thank you so much for joining me.
I appreciate you having me today.
We're really excited to sit down and chat with you. Let's kick things off by going back to the start. How did you get involved in beach volleyball and what drew you to the sport?
Yeah, I think at an early age, I was exposed to the sport through my parents. They were always playing at a campground that we'd go to every weekend as a kid. And of course, I was too young to get to play in the kind of weekly game. But we were always there on the sidelines, watching, learning, keeping score, shagging balls, doing whatever we could to stay involved. And as I continued to get older and grow, got more interested in, how can I start to participate? And that was really the spark that kicked off my love of volleyball, was at this campground. And it just evolved into participating more and more, and then trying to train and get some structure. And then, as I was in elementary school, I joined the school team, and then that kind of snowballed into eventually joining the city team. And then that snowballed into eventually playing at the university level. So I don't think my introduction to the sport was much different than, the large majority of youth that end up playing volleyball. But I can say as a kid, it was all I wanted to do, was just be on the court, whether it be indoor or on the beach, and just be playing.
Now, Canada isn't necessarily what you think of when somebody says beaches. What does a winter training schedule look like as part of Canada's beach volleyball team?
Yeah, so it's definitely unique. And I think most people playing volleyball in Canada, they're going to do the cycle of playing beach volleyball in the summer when it's nice enough, and then you're going to play indoor volleyball in the winter. That's not exactly optimal for training to be a professional in one of those disciplines. We're either playing beach all the time or you're playing indoor all the time. And when it comes to playing beach all the time in Canada, you have to get a little bit creative. So as soon as the weather gets cold, we'll move indoors. We have the Canadian National Team Training Center at Downsview Park. We have 3 international courts inside an old airplane hangar. So that's where we can train during the winter, or anytime it gets less than 10 degrees. Once it gets less than 10 degrees on Lake Ontario, the cold wind off that water makes it feel a lot colder. So we'll spend a period of time training inside at Downsview Park, but it's different. There's no elements there. There's no sun, there's no wind. It's very consistent. So it's good for a period of time, but at a certain time, you need to get outside. You need to get beside a body of water where the direction and the conditions are constantly changing. For that, we typically go to 1 or 2 spots. We'll end up heading out towards California, or we'll head down to Brazil. And that's kind of a melting pot of other international beach volleyball teams. So you link up, and now you have some different opponents to train. So it ends up being a lot of time away from home. But I guess one of the benefits is we typically get to miss most of winter.
Those are some creative solutions. But when it comes to legendary beaches, I think Australia is pretty high up on the list. What was it like representing Canada at the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games? And can you describe what that moment was like walking into the beach volleyball venue for the first time?
For sure. I mean, Australia is an amazing place. The first time I went there was in 2012 with my wife. We just decided, post-grad to blow off some steam, and Australia seemed like a great place to just go and tour around. So I was excited because I'd already been to Brisbane, I'd already been to the Gold Coast, so I knew how beautiful it was, how nice the people were, and how much they loved sport. So the opportunity to go to Commonwealth Games was, something I'll never forget. And kind of with that comes walking in into the stadium. So it was at Coolangatta Beach, which is, a very picturesque beach. The sunsets there are unbelievable. That didn't happen in our first game, but down the road we got to play as the sun was setting, and the purple and pink sky was just something amazing. But that first experience walking into a stadium that's a few thousand people full there to specifically watch you was something special. We've played on the world tour in stadiums before, but the atmosphere, the energy at a major games is something that's completely different. I'd had the opportunity to represent Canada at World Championships and our international tour, but to be able to represent Canada as a member of that big team is something that I don't even really know how to explain. Other athletes who'd maybe even never heard of beach volleyball, they had no idea who you are or what you've done, but their kind of allure of what is this sport and people talking about the atmosphere and then coming down to see you play was something special, because at some of our tournaments there's not always a lot of fans. They're in these remote locations, so to be in such a populated area that loves sport, with the stadium as beautiful as it was, with the backdrop as beautiful as it was, and with that energy, it's something I'll never forget. But I'll have to admit that I was pretty nervous for that first game, and I didn't play my best. And we kept it together, and we were able to win, and I was able to settle down for the rest of the tournament. But it was a little bit overwhelming for a few minutes while you're standing there waiting to be called out.
Now, speaking of the excitement of those games, can you describe what that moment was like right after you and your partner won a silver medal for Canada?
Yeah, so that was an interesting experience for me, because we went into the Commonwealth Games as a heavy favorite. So we knew we'd likely be playing Australia in the final, which is exactly how, the dominoes fell. We were going to play Australia in the final at home, full stadium, and we were going to be the enemy. Not a foreign role for myself, but it was nerve-wracking. We were the team to beat, and we didn't come out great in the first set. We lost the first set. We won the second set fairly handily, and we were up in the third very late in the third set. So, there was points in my mind where, I was already thinking, like, if I just keep doing my job, I'm going to win the Commonwealth Games. And, in the period of 5 minutes, that changed. So we ended up losing in the third set. You exit the stadium, they say, put on your podium gear, and then 10 minutes later, you're back on the podium standing there getting your medal. And, in those 15 minutes, I was proud of our team for how we played. I was proud of winning a silver medal for Canada, but I was also extremely disappointed that we weren't able to win that gold medal. And I think at the time, I didn't really appreciate the experience, the effort my team had put in, and what a great job and a solid performance we put together. I think that took me a little bit of time after the Commonwealth Games in order to truly appreciate. But yeah, it's a little bit anticlimactic, but I remember people taking photos of me on the podium and thinking, like, I should be way happier than I am right now, but I could just only replay the disappointing moment in my head. Now that we're removed from the whole situation, it's 2018, now we're in 2021 or 2022. Wow, the year has just melted together. I look back with really fond memories of that entire experience. I think as athletes, we sometimes experience adversity, and we can either use that to, push us further ahead and drive us closer to our goals, or we can use it to break us. And, I think that moment in 2018 really prepared me for the next Olympic qualification and other big moments like that. So, I have very fond memories of the Commonwealth Games. And, I think any athlete who has the opportunity to go will have a similar experience to I have. That team environment is just something so special.
That's some really great perspective into the human emotion that's associated with competing at an international level. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit. You have two cats, George Harrison and Penny Lane, two great names and a nod to the Beatles. Following on that music theme, what's your go-to pre-competition song that gets you ready to compete?
Yeah, so I think there's two schools of thought. There's those that they need music to really pump them up, and then there's those that you're going to use music to almost settle you down. And in my case, that's I'm the settle myself down type of pre-game listener. I don't want to get my, my vibration, my energy level too high before I start, because, you start to play a little bit out of control. You start to play too powerful and maybe away from your strengths. So for me, leading up to the game is very much about, keeping myself calm. So I wouldn't say I have like a one song I'm listening to all the time, but a collection of artists. It's very folky and like indie rock. I'm a big fan of Wilco, big fan of Sufjan Stevens, but things that are comfortable for me. It's probably albums or songs I've listened to hundreds, if not thousands of times already. And it just puts me in that, that mental clarity before I walk into the chaos.
Those are some great choices to help you focus in. Now, beach volleyball is a sport that involves a lot of teamwork. In your opinion, what aspects make a good beach volleyball partner?
Yeah, so a beach volleyball partnership is a relationship. As much as you're, you date someone, that you're dating your beach volleyball partner. You spend a lot of time together on the road, in hotels, having dinner, working out, practicing. So there's been times where I've spent more time in a year with my beach volleyball partner than I have with my wife. So, much like any relationship, I think, communication and listening skills are super important, because that's how we're conducting ourselves on the court. We're in a really high pressure environment. So the way we talk about things, no matter how innocent you try and make them, can be interpreted in a completely different way. So one, you need to be actively listening so that you don't interpret something, incorrectly that could, cause an outburst or distract you. And the second thing is being aware of how you're saying things, either back to your partner or, initiating a conversation, because in those environments, those pressure situations, it's very easy to, make up stories, make up what someone is saying, or hear something differently. And I think the more clearly you can communicate and the more actively you can listen in a partnership on the court, that's going to serve you, exceptionally well, but off the court as well. That's where really the foundation of your partnership is laid. So if you can do those things, if you can communicate effectively and actively listen, I think you're setting your partnership up for success.
Building on those qualities that you just mentioned, this is kind of a fun follow-up question. If you could pick anyone, dead or alive, to be your next beach volleyball partner, who would you pick and why?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, and the classic beach volleyball answer is you're going to go with one of the legends of the sport. So in that aspect, I think I'd pick Emmanuel. He was a Brazilian beach volleyball player. He's argued to be like one of the greatest of all time in our sport. So I think that's like the easy answer. And I was trying to figure out, if I could pick anyone, who would I play? And I think I would pick Kobe. And the reason I would pick Kobe Bryant is just, there's the debate in beach volleyball constantly, like what would be your starting lineup for volleyball if they were all basketball players? And because they're so athletic, they're so tall, they're so physical, if we were to put them in a volleyball court and teach them how to play volleyball, it would probably be a spectacle to see. And, I think playing volleyball with one of the greatest of all time from another sport is something that would be super unique. And I think basketball most closely crosses over with something like volleyball. So to be able to play with a tactician of his game in basketball and try and convert him to beach volleyball, I think would be a cool experiment.
That's a really good answer. And I never really thought about the comparisons between volleyball and basketball. Now, you've had a very long, very successful career so far. I'm sure you have a strong support system to help you along the way. Who's been your biggest mentor, and what's the greatest lesson that they've taught you?
Yeah, so I think two influential people come to mind, when we're looking at people who've had a large impact in my volleyball career. And I think one was my university coach at Queen's University, Brenda Willis. And I think the other one is my dad. So, at Queen's, in my undergrad, I think Brenda really showed me that hard work pays off and you have to earn everything. And that didn't resonate with everyone. It was a tough lesson, but I think I migrated towards that school of thought. I'm going to be somebody who works extremely hard because nothing was given to me in beach volleyball. And I had a lot of success under Brenda as a coach. She really took me from an average player and instilled the work ethic and the foundation I needed to become eventually a world-class player. I didn't end at Queen's as a world-class player, but the lessons and the systems she put in place served me, until this day. She's still the one who told me before a game, you should be vertical 3 hours before. So if you play at 9 o'clock, at 6 o'clock, you should be out of bed, you should be vertical, you should be moving around. And that's something I did all the way until the end of last season, even, 3 hours, no matter what time I play, I'm vertical before. And it was just one of those Brenda things that stuck around. So I think she was a huge influence early on in my career as I was turning professional. And then, my dad, one of the lessons my dad has always, instilled in me and lived by is to never give up, right? No matter what the odds are stacked against you, you continue to push and you continue to give it your all, and then whatever happens, happens. And if you never give up and you always give your best, no matter what, at the end of the day, no matter what the result, you can always be proud of the effort you put in. And, that's something I see my dad living is, he's an extremely hard worker. He puts his family first in every situation, and he never gives up. And I think that lesson has served me extremely well in beach volleyball, because on paper, I was never identified to do what I did. I was never identified as a guy who was going to make the national team or a guy who was going to play 100 tournaments. It was, by working extremely hard and by never giving up, I ultimately was able to have a successful career as an international player.
That's a great answer and some great lessons for any aspiring athletes that are listening. We're going to end off this interview with a fun segment of this or that. I'm going to give you 2 options and you're going to tell me which one you prefer. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with morning practice or evening practice.
Morning, always. I am an extremely early riser. I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I start my workout by 5. So anything in the evening, I need to take a long nap in the afternoon if I'm going to be productive.
Okay, very early morning riser. Would you rather be the smartest person in the room or the funniest?
Neither. I know that's not an answer. Although it doesn't seem like it, I'm not the most extroverted person naturally. I prefer to kind of melt into the crowd. So I wouldn't want to be labeled as the smartest person in the room or the funniest. I'd hope that someone would at least trump me so I could kind of fall into the background. But if I had to pick one, I'd go with funny.
Okay. Next, would you rather always have a full phone battery or a full tank of gas?
Phone battery. I drive my car to where it says 0 all the time. And I know I that, but I push the limit as to how low on gas I can be at any given time.
Okay. Compete in a destination that you've always wanted to visit or win a medal on Canadian soil?
I'd say home soil, because I haven't had the opportunity to play in Canada very often. The last time was in 2014 in North Bay. They had a continental tour event, and my family and extended family were all able to come watch, and no one really gets to see me play unless it's in those events. And they're so few and far between that I'd love to play an even bigger event, a major event at home, and just have that experience with my wife and now my daughter, and then bring my family and extended family together and just, have a good tournament on home soil and hopefully take home a medal.
That's a great answer and sounds like it would be really special. The last question of this round, coffee or tea?
So again, an interesting question. I'm a huge coffee drinker. I used to travel on the road with a small coffee machine and beans. So I would always have good coffee no matter where I was in the world. That resulted in me drinking a ton of coffee. And then I decided that maybe I shouldn't be drinking so much coffee. So I recently switched completely to tea. Not that I don't love a coffee, but now my daily is tea. But if I still had to pick, I would pick coffee.
Coffee has a special place in my heart too. All right. Thank you, Sam, so much for sitting down and chatting with me. I'm going to make sure to tag your social media account so everybody can see what you're up to. Thank you to everybody watching. Tune in next time for a new conversation with another champ.